Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Breacher, and we're looking at the Mistweaver Monk. Yes, we are. What a beast of a thing this is. Certainly very enticing for those of you who want a more involved healer. You want more to do, you want different things, you want to be moving around, you want to constantly be thinking about what's going to happen next, and luckily, from Mists of Pandaria, Blizzard kind of took on board the problem of Mistweavers, which is the RNG associated with Renewing Mist, which we'll talk about soon, and they kind of fixed it, almost, sort of, generally just by giving you more Renewing Mist to throw out there, but it certainly helps. It has certainly helped alleviate some of that annoyance that came with the Mistweaver Monk. So we're going to look at it today. It's one of the... It's not a super staple healer of every raid. That's not to be said. It's one of the niche healers that you'd want to bring in and alongside some of the big healers like the Paladins and the Disc Priests and have a Mistweaver there to really prop people up. If you play them well, and I mean that you are into more intense playstyle, certainly more intense than you get with a Resto Druid or a Resto Shaman, then you can actually get great results. If you tend to be a little bit more laid back in how you like to heal, you see healing as a bit of a relaxing time, then maybe the Mistweaver's not for you. Because if you go straight up, just sort of stood around healing like you would do with any of the others, you're not really going to see the best results, I don't think. Although some fights do lend themselves to that gameplay. Okay, so we'll go into it now and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Hopefully, if you're thinking about playing one or you just want some general bits who maybe you missed out on. So the Mistweaver Monk gains 2 stances. Okay, so we get Stance of the Wise Serpent, which is our healing stance, yeah? This is our balls to the wall, usual caster-style healer. And then we also gain Stance of the Spirited Crane, which is a kind of a half-hearted Windwalker stance, where we'll actually do some healing via DPSing as a melee. This is one of the most important things you need to know about your Mistweaver, is that they are designed to also be played in melee, which means they cannot be targeted by various things that usually affect the other healers. And you can use that to your advantage by saying, look, I'm not going to be affected by this, which allows me to be free to deal with different scenarios and be in different positions than healers ordinarily could not be in. Alright, so that's something you need to bear in mind. Blizzard has accounted for the fact that if you pop into that, because you have Spirited Crane and you will be doing melee DPS at some point, then of course you will not be targeted by things that affect the range, and usually means lots of spreading out because melee generally don't deal with those. Our basic go-to spells will be Renewing Mist. Renewing Mist is a very cool spell, 8-second recharge, so it kind of replaces the button if you played the other specs of things like Keg Smash, and of course Rising Sun Kick, and it generally just throws out this hot, particularly weak hot. Off we go, whee! You can see it travels through the air, levels on that target, but then it does something very cool. It then jumps to other targets that are damaged, so it's a smart heal. Okay, it's a smart heal. It will seek out people who have taken the most damage, and then it will jump to them. So you'll get 1 stack left on the main target, then it will go to the next target, they will have 2 stacks, and then it will jump again to a 3rd target, and then you'll have 3 of these hots ticking away on people. So as you can see, it's not a very powerful hot by any means. It will do a significant amount of healing over the course of the fight. Renewing Mist, though, also generates some chi. Okay, so we get 8 seconds, we get some chi. Very, very fucking awesome, okay? So that's one of our primary chi generators. Now, the important thing about Renewing Mist is that it synchronizes with our big heal that we're using a lot, which is Uplift. This is our big AoE heal, okay? So what this does, Uplift costs 2 chi, and it heals all the targets that have Renewing Mist on them by about 10,500, okay? So why is this kind of great and bad? One, we can put out a lot of Renewing Mist, and I'll show you that shortly, which means our Uplift can hit a lot of people at once. The issue is that those people don't always need healing, right? If we're preparing for a big AoE, very, very difficult to say who's going to take the brunt of that damage. We can't always work that out, which means we try our best, but ultimately we are at the mercy of wherever Renewing Mist decides to go. So how do we combat that? Well, I'm going to mention this earlier. I usually do the talents next, but I'll mention it now. So we have things like Pool of Mist, which gives 3 charges to Renewing Mist, which means we can throw out 9 Renewing Mist very, very quickly. And also we have this cooldown called Thunder Focus Tea, which means our Renewing Mist will jump even more times than that. What we can essentially do under the cooldowns of Renewing Mist is blanket a whole raid. We can do that, certainly in Mythic you can blanket a whole raid, and also bear in mind that multi-strikes cause you to not incur a cooldown on Renewing Mist, so you get extra charges of Renewing Mist due to high multi-strike, which means multi-strike is our main stat. Okay, so that's the crux and the basic of it. We also have this weird spell called Soothing Mist. Now, Soothing Mist is very interesting because we have this statue. Okay, you want this statue down all the time. Your Jade Serpent statue. You want it in a good range of everybody in the fight. You don't really want to be moving it a hell of a lot unless the fight mandatorily requires you to do that. And Soothing Mist is a nice channel heal. So what you do is you pick someone and you channel at them. Okay, so you're channeling this constant heal. Now, this will not generate any chi. Okay, which it used to. It doesn't anymore, so it's a bit of a bummer on that. And it'll cost mana every time it ticks. You can probably see here, if I put it on the white area. Oh, this area is actually a bit better. If I put it there, you'll actually see these lines. Okay, that's every time this spell is going to tick, which means it's actually going to cause a heal. When it's not in those lines, it won't cause a heal, okay? Very, very simple idea. And it'll cost a little bit of mana each time it does that. But in general, it's a very, very cheap heal, okay? Very, very cheap. And then we have our main heal, which is Surging Mist. Now, Surging Mist has more interactions, okay? Surging Mist is a casted heal, okay? Unless you're channeling Soothing Mist, in which case it becomes instant. And it does generate chi, okay? So Surging Mist does generate chi. Very, very important that you know you can generate fast chi with Surging Mist. Alright, so Chi is going to turn into more Uplifts. It's also going to turn into more Enveloping Mists. So Uplift is our AoE heal. Enveloping Mist is our single target heal. It's going to cost you 3 Chi. It's not amazing. Okay, it's not amazing. It's pretty good, but not amazing. So what you'll tend to find with your Mistweaver is you'll run into regularly, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 times per encounter, where you have 4 Chi, your Chi is maxed, and you don't need to Uplift because nobody's taken a lot of AoE damage, and then you'll be throwing things like Enveloping Mist onto the tanks and things like that just to spend that Chi. We definitely want to spend Chi because we can generate more Chi via Renewing Mist coming back off cooldown and so on, but our Mana Tea, which is our Mana Regen ability, generates every time we spend 4 Chi. Every time we spend 4 Chi, we gain Mana Tea back, okay? So we want to keep producing Chi as much as possible and then spending that Chi and not wasting any of our Chi, okay? So that's a very important playstyle aspect of the Mistweaver Monk, is to generate as much Chi as possible and also spend as much as possible, okay? Very, very important. So let's do some finer notes on this. As I said, your Uplift, which is your big AoE spell, actually ties to your Renewing Mist. Now, some people even go as far as to create an add-on, which will show you how much your Uplift will currently heal for. Because you often run into a situation where AoE goes out and your Renewing Mists just aren't on the targets. And you might cast an Uplift and you might have a lot of Renewing Mists out and your Uplift just heals for absolutely nothing. Because your Renewing Mists were just not on those targets. It's not a huge deal these days because you can throw out so many Renewing Mists that you generally blanket most people, but be aware if you're going for Uplift and you're not tracking in some way, one, who has Renewing Mist, have they taken damage, or using an add-on which tracks just the value of your Uplift, you might be spamming a lot of Uplift that are just pure overheal at that point, where something as simple as an Enveloping Mist might have been better for you, okay? Something to bear in mind that is Uplift is tied directly to who has Renewing Mists. If they don't have Renewing Mists, doing an Uplift will not heal them. Okay, very important. You can let people die by spamming Uplift just because they didn't have a Renewing Mist on them. It's very fucking important that you know that. So let's go into our talents and see how they work. So level 15, you can pick pretty much any of these guys, honestly. I like Celerity. The reason for this is I often want to move quite quickly as a Mistweaver. So let's say something like the Iron Fell Reaver, and he's casting Barrage. I just want to move very, very quickly. And then he might do Blitz, so I want to move very quickly again. And then the Blitz is coming back my way, and I might want to move very, very quickly again. But saying that, Tiger's Lust is just a sprint, flat-out sprint, if that's something more important to you. And having some movement speed at the end of your roll is easily usable as well. I find Celerity the best because when I want to roll, I just want to roll, and that's generally enough. Okay, very few fights actually require you to move a great distance, especially in Hellfire Citadel. That aspect of the fights just doesn't really exist anymore. If you can't do it in 3 rolls, yeah, well, you know, you probably goofed up from the very start and stood in the wrong place. At level 30, Chi Burst is generally the go-to. Why? It's just the easiest, honestly. You can get some results from Chi Wave if everyone's kind of gathered up. Zen Sphere is really kind of awkward to get the real best results out of, whereas Chi Burst is just nice, it's fast, it's meaty, it's good, it's just chunky heals. Just bear in mind it goes where you're directing, okay? So if I'm targeting over here, and I stand like this, and I can still heal people, right? If I Chi Burst, it's not going to go towards that target. It's going to go this way. So if I Chi Burst now, if you watch, the burst actually goes that way. So it's a little bit of FPS-ish type stuff. Just bearing that in mind with Chi Burst is that you want to aim your character where you want it to go. Okay? It's super crucial you do that, because if you're just stood here healing the tank and the raid's over here and you're like, oh, everyone's taking damage, Chi Burst, you won't heal anybody with it. So this is why it's a more involved playstyle, okay? You can't just target and forget. You have to point your character where you want that Chi Burst to go. At level 45, you're generally going to pick Power Strikes or Chi Brew. Now, back in the day, I would have said always Chi Brew, but that's not really the case. And as I've played more with Power Strikes, I took some advice of some of the other Mistweaver friends that I've got that are obviously far more experienced than I, and they said, look, once you learn how to use Power Strikes, it's actually incredible. And the reason is you can generate Chi spheres with it. That's actually the main aspect of it, not the fact that you can get an extra Chi, okay, to kind of pad things out. That's not really what you're after. What you're generally after is the ability to generate Chi spheres near your character. But bear in mind, you have to kind of move, right? So you'll generate like a bank of Chi spheres, which is very cool. So if I go ahead and try and generate some Chi here, Chi. Bum, 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 bum. I'm going to wait for my Renewing Mist so I can fire off an Expel Harm. Okay, so I've got 4. If I then Expel Harm... Oh no, I goofed it up. No, there it is. You'll generate these spheres, okay? So your spheres can then be picked up when you spend that Chi. So if I uplift, bump, and then move into it, you can see I generated the extra Chi. And you can build up Chi spheres should you need to go Mega Burst mode and do lots of back-to-back uplifts. You can do something similar with Chi Brew as well. It depends on how much you want to manage it. It really does depend on how much you want to manage it. It's as simple as that. At level 60, entirely up to you. Really is up to you. I like charging Oxwave because if you're generally going to run a 5-mana, or even in raids, things have stun diminishing returns all the time, and you're just after the smallest stun you can, and it just helps out in a little bit. At level 75, Diffuse Magic tends to be what healers go for, and I kind of agree with them. If the only thing that really threatens a healer is usually the big magical AoE, yeah, something that's like going to burn everybody, or maybe it's a barrage and you didn't move quickly enough, or something along those lines, and that doesn't happen regularly. So the 1.5 minute cooldown isn't as much of a big deal compared to what we discussed with the Brewmaster with things like Dampen Harm. However, Healing Elixirs has its place, but how often really are you spam healing yourself? If you're having to spam heal yourself, which is something I see in LFR all the time, is most people's heals are like 75% on themselves, you're just taking damage there. You're just like a damage sponge for some fucking reason. So Diffuse Magic is like that. Oh shit, I'm about to die. I'm in a bad way. Diffuse Magic, 90% damage reduction. Awesome. Cool. At level 90, you're generally going to choose either Rushing Jade Wind or Chi Torpedo. Chi Torpedo was a little lackluster early in the expansion, but it's kind of come back now. Rushing Jade Wind is really good, but it's super expensive. It's 20,000 mana. Oh my god. It is very, very expensive. Now, mana's not a huge deal to Mistweavers, it's got to be said. You can regenerate a hell of a lot, especially if you start doing some melee, so you can kind of get away with it. But bear in mind, you have to think of this thing like a druid would think about its wild growth. Am I going to hit enough people within 8 yards? Am I going to hit 6 people with Rushing Jade Wind? If I'm not, it's probably not worth 20,000 mana, right? To generate 1 Chi. In comparison to Renewing Mist, which is like 6,000 and generates a Chi, or Expel Harm, which is 4,000 and generates a Chi. Yeah, Rushing Jade Wind is very expensive, but it also does a lot of healing. Yes, it does do a shitload of healing. So it's one of those moments where you're like, okay, some big AoE's coming, everyone's gathered up, cool, I can get good use out of Rushing Jade Wind here. That's awesome. So Death Throws on Kilrog Deadeye, all that kind of stuff. Rushing Jade Wind's probably going to come in handy there. Pounding on the Fell Reaver. I could stand in there and I can get good use out of Rushing Jade Wind. If you can't get good use out of Rushing Jade Wind, Chi Torpedo is great. Why? It's completely free and does reasonable healing. Okay, it does reasonable healing and is completely free. Zuen, not so much. Level 100, I would love Breath of the Serpent to be cool, because it is amazing looking, but it's just not. It's just very, very irritating that you have to control your statue and add all this extra aspect in, and it doesn't do that much. So Pool of Mist is generally the go-to, because it gives you a Renewing Mist 3 charges, which is great for blanketing the raid, for the big AoE damage and all that kind of stuff. Chi Explosion, though, if you're permanently in melee, I was thinking of fights like Cromark. I probably got his name wrong. The one that was in Blackrock Foundry with the slams and the pillars and the grasping things. That fight, generally the Mistweavers were permanently in melee, which meant they could Chi Explosion everyone around them. and that would just do tons and tons of healing. So you have to bear in mind, are you just going to be literally in melee all the time, doing a lot of melee damage? Chi Explosion is pretty cool, because all that's going to just radiate out from everybody. Very, very awesome. If you're going to be doing a mix of both, Pool of Mist is generally the way to go, because you just get these 3 extra charges, and it's also really nice for 5-mans as well, and we'll talk about the DPS side of things in a moment, because you get 3 charges on your Rising Sun Kick as well. Let's talk about glyphs. Glyphs have wonderful choice for the Brewmaster, honestly. The general go-to if you're raiding is going to be Glyph of Renewing Mist. It increases the range that Mist can travel by 20 yards. And obviously in certain raids, people are really fucking spread. But not always, right? That's why the Mistweaver is pretty cool. All these glyphs are swappable. If your raid's very, very close to each other, that extra 20 yards ain't worth a piss, really. So you can go ahead and glyph that. Glyph of Targeted Expulsion, which means your Expel Harm can be used on other people. Expel Harm generates chi and is cheaper than Renewing Mist. More chi, more mana return, more spenders, so on and so forth. Want to be using Expel Harm, which means you can Expel Harm other people. But later in the game, as you get sort of your tier 18 4-piece, which we'll talk about soon, is not really worth it. Some people are starting to replace this one. Generally considered mandatory until you're comfortable with dropping it. Glyph of Detox, I really like. There's lots of dispelling to be done in Hellfire Citadel. Not every fight, again. Always change it depending on the fight, which means that your detox will heal the target for 4%. So it's free healing on things that usually debuff people and cause them harm. But you can also have Glyph of Detoxing, which has 2 charges. So if you're doing something like Mark of the Necromancer on Hellfire High Council, then you have lots of dispelling to do there. Having 2 charges is very, very cool, because the dispelling can get quite intense towards the end. Having 2 charges can be very, very handy. All right. You can also mix in lots and lots of other ones. Okay. There's plenty of choices to go with here. Even Touch of Death, I would like to give a special shout to. The other ones are self-explanatory, but Touch of Death is become, in certain fights, I can't really think of one in Hellfire Citadel, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, maybe Grasping Hands or something, or Dragging Hands, something like that on the big mountain guy. But Touch of Death is very, very handy, because it's a lot of damage, and it helps finish off targets that just need to be finished off, which puts the DPS back onto DPSing the boss, which means your boss dies quicker, so on and so on, and it costs nothing. Okay, so you can just go in, stand near the, you're going to be in melee a lot of the time anyways, Mistweaver, and the Grasping Hand, or the one that's on the tank is about to die. I could just Touch of Death it, that's finished, everybody back on the boss dies quicker. It's all little things that add up, so it's worth mentioning that completely. So what is our playstyle? Our playstyle is going to be based around, in a general sense, keeping Renewing Mist rolling, okay? Tracking how it's doing, who has Renewing Mist, do they need healing, and more importantly, what is about to happen in the fight? Do I need to be uplifting? Do I need to set up for that? If you need to set up for a big AoE, make sure you've got your Thunder Focus Tea ready so you can blanket the raid in Renewing Mist, which means your uplifts will be ready. Get your chi ready to do that. But other than that, we're going to be keeping Renewing Mist generally on cooldown, okay? Firing that out, generating chi. We're going to be using our Expel Harm to generate chi as well, and then we're going to be spending it as appropriately, either via Enveloping Mist or via Uplift, whatever the game demands. Okay, that's the general way of going on things. This is going to generate our Mana Tea. Every single fight in the game right now has a moment where you can stand and channel Mana Tea. You generally do not need to glyph it under any circumstances. We also want to know when we can use our Revival. Revival is much more cool now, much more powerful is not the right word, but much more useful now. The aspect of the fox is gone, so druids can't like run and channel tranquility anymore, so revival gains a little bit of a benefit there. Also just stops those danger moments. And of course, if our tanks are going to ask for life cocoon, remember in the current state of the game, tanks will be actively asking you for life cocoon rather than you using it whenever you feel necessary. So be aware that to be super fast, it's like, oh, I need life cocoon, okay, cool, go. You know, you want to be able to do that. You want to be able to just throw it out on demand whenever it's needed. Super awesome. Now, let's go to the more difficult side of things, which is when we go into melee. Now, I say more difficult because you have to manage this. One thing I'd like to point out here is if I just generate some chi, 4 chi. If I jump into Stance of the Spirited Crane now, you can see I keep my chi, okay? But if I switch back, I lose my chi. Very important mechanic you need to be aware of. What you can do is build up chi before you go into the stance. So what you can do is like the start of the fight, you know you're going to be in melee for a while because while you're doing weak melee damage and kind of weak healing, okay, you're still better than if nobody's taking any damage, right? You might as well do some damage. That's contributing to the fight. And this is generally your go-to mana regen. While a lot of the other healers have things like they can cast lightning bolts for the shamans, which doesn't cost them anything. The druids can cast wrath, all that kind of stuff. This is how the Mistweaver deals with things. So what you can do pre-pull is something like, okay, I'll Thunder Focus Tea, I'll throw out some Renewing Mists, Cool, cool, cool. And I've got 4 chi. Right, see you later, boys. I'm going in melee for a bit. And you get this kind of a weaker side of being a Windwalker. So what you have is Rising Sun Kick, you have Tiger Power, Tiger Palm, which costs 1 chi, and Blackout Kick. Now, Rising Sun Kick, if you have Pool of Mist, has 3 charges. That doesn't mean that you spam it, okay? You want the debuff. Same as a Windwalker, you're after the debuff. You also want Tiger Power up. And then you're going to be spamming Blackout Kick. Why? Blackout Kick gains something called Crane's Zeal. Crane's Zeal increases your crit chance by 20%, okay? So your Blackout Kicks do a lot of damage. While you're doing all this melee stuff, and you're going to keep an eye on things like Tiger Power, and you're going to keep an eye on making sure the Rising Sun Kick debuff is on, all this kind of stuff, you'll notice this effect appears, okay? This is called Vital Mists. Vital Mist reduces the cast time and mana cost of your Surging Mist by 100%. So you'll be throwing out free Surging Mist. Now, if you're like me, and I can't change this, I apologize, my Surging Mist is on my bar for being a Mistweaver, okay? Or Wise Serpent stance. So you can see my Surging Mist is actually on number 2. Of course, if I go into stance of the Spirited Crane, that disappears. It changes to Jab. And now that's why I need an extra key binding for my Surging Mist. Little minor note, but something to bear in mind. So what are we doing while we're in melee? Well, we're doing Eminence healing, okay? Which means our damage is going to be equally translated over by our statue to other people. So we're just going to be DPSing. Now, it's very, very slow. Okay, it's very slow. And there we go. Surging Mist. Go ahead. Fire that off. I'm doing a lot of Blackout Kicks while maintaining our Rising Sun Kick debuff and our Tiger Power and all that good stuff. And still using things like Chi Burst. No problem with using those as well. Still using things like Rushing Jade Wind, which is very, very cool because you're in the melee anyway. Okay, so you're generally going to get the benefit of those. And generally just chilling out. Now, what you'll notice is this doesn't actually cost a lot of mana. But, boy, you're spending so much Chi. It generates a shitload of Mana Tea. Oh my god. It just throws Mana Tea at you, which is very, very cool. You can see 10. Keep going. Keep going. Just generating so much Mana Tea. 12. Keep going. Keep going. And it just keeps on generating this Mana Tea all day. And it looks like you'll come out of that and you'll be able to regen so much more mana than you actually spent. Okay? So you can see I only used half of it to go back to, and still have 6 stacks of Mana Tea ready and raring to go. So that is the general playstyle. So which means that a good Mistweaver is doing all these things. So when the big AoE and stuff's coming, he's going to pop out, he's going to switch back to his Wise Serpent stance, he's going to throw out Renewing Mist, get that big bulk ready, and start getting ready for some big Uplift spam where he's going to go Uplift, and then he's going to Chi Burst, and then Uplift, and throw all this stuff out and do huge amounts of burst healing, maybe even a revival on top of that. Oh, it's gone quiet again? Cool. I'm just going to switch back and start doing my melee damage, okay? Let's not tank anything. That would be a stupid idea. Switch back and then start meleeing and generating a lot of Mana Tea. And oh shit, switch back again because it's time for some AoE. Oh crap, now the melee is going to take a lot of damage. Back in, Rushing Jade Wind. You're going to be doing all these things, which means the Mistweaver is a shitload of fun, guys, because you get to do all this different kinds of stuff, right? You get to do all these different kinds of things, and you're going to be involved. If, like I said, if you're looking for a healer which kind of hangs back, just kind of pops heals out, kind of like a hippie style, got a bit of a reefer in your mouth, and you're just chilling out and throwing out Renewing Mist. Not really. You're going to get like so little benefit and not be considered, in my eyes, at least a good Mistweaver who should be taking advantage of both of their stances regularly whenever the opportunity strikes. It will give you what the advantages of playing like that. You'll have a ton more mana, which means you can do way more healing, you can be way more spammy, use lots more Surging Mist, lots more Rushing Jade Winds, you can do all that kind of stuff, you'll contribute more damage to the boss, yeah, that'll die even sooner, you'll keep everybody happy, and you'll just generally produce more. So a lot of the Mistweavers I see failing are generally the guys who are like, I'm a healer, so all I do is I kind of stand back and I do this. And oh, I have this kind of goofy spec. It doesn't do a lot of healing, but yeah, I have this option to go melee. No, it's part of your class. You are designed around it. You need to get into the habit of doing those things. In terms of things I'm tracking, one is on my grid, and I'll show that in the gameplay video, which follows later, is who has Renewing Mist. I'm okay with that, and making judgment calls with that. Rushing Jade Wind, obviously. Renewing Mist, you want to keep that on cooldown. Expel Harm, you'll generally get the feel for, because it's 15 seconds. I don't really need to track that. And Chi Burst, Revival, big cooldowns, okay? And Life Cocoon. Alright, guys, you need to be aware of all those things. Alright, so thank you for watching the basics. Let's jump into some gameplay and see all this in action. Alright, bye-bye.